Welcome back, my fellow Titans. We are no longer Team Kong or Team Godzilla. In this epic battle, we have to join forces together and shall be renamed Team Cogzilla. That works, right? It's been a few days now since we got our first teaser trailer for the Godzilla Vs Kong sequel titled Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire. I already did a video giving you my first reaction and thoughts to what they revealed, but I have not been able to stop thinking about what they showed to us, what that title means, thinking long and hard about who exactly is the monkey in that chair. Actually, orangutans aren't classified as monkeys. I hope you get atomic blasted in the face. So what I want to do here is just talk about the best theories going around online in the monster community about who this villain is. Our idea is how he connects to the past of both Godzilla and King Kong. But really, this was just another excuse for me to talk more about Godzilla and Kong, because who doesn't get excited talking about these two guys? Actually, there's evidence to support that Godzilla might actually be female. Alright, so jumping into it here, the biggest conclusion drawn from this is I think we have all come to an agreement that this is most likely a Kong ancestor of the orangutan species. It does seem pretty clear based off the body shape. I mean, I was kind of blown away by how skinny of a waist this orangutan has. You see him move to the side for a bit and you're like, dang. What's his diet like? Then on the close-ups to his face, it looks like he has more orange fur instead of like brown blackish like King Kong. So just taking that into effect that it's mainly going to be inspired by an orangutan species, that gives us a lot to go off of. For one, the arm length in orangutans. Not only are they extremely strong creatures, they also just have this giant span. And in a movie where it's big monsters fighting each other, reach is very important. We also assume by the size of his body and lankiness that he'll be able to be a much faster opponent, so he'll both have speed on top of Godzilla and Kong. But the part we really haven't talked about the most is I think this will definitely be the most intelligent titan that either of them have ever faced. Orangutans are considered to be the most intelligent ape species out there. And with the way the teaser trailer's portraying this villain as if it's gone through and battled so many other titans in its time, you have to imagine all these bones and pieces of different monsters were all taken down by him. Even when zooming in on the face of the villain here, people have noticed the war paint that looks to be colored red. That just screams intelligence. Think about how many other monsters would think to actually put on war paint on their face to kind of go into battle. It's kind of unheard of. That's what I think will be the most intriguing part of this new villain. I think it'll be one of the most human-like villains we have had in Titan form. Like, I'm not going to be surprised at all if this thing is even able to speak. I don't think it's going to be busting out English or anything like that, but we saw that Godzilla was a god to some sort of human civilization. I would not be surprised if there was also another human civilization worshipping this orangutan villain. I mean, even in King Kong's first solo movie, he had tribe members that were also worshipping King Kong, and those people put war paint on their face. I also think this is going to put into perspective a lot of the things that we saw teased in Godzilla vs Kong, specifically when Kong is going into Hollow Earth. Just looking at the color face war paint on the villain, that is the same color war paint that is used on the handprint leading into the throne. That feels like a giant clue that this throne belongs to this villain, and we just don't know exactly where he was during the events of Godzilla vs Kong. In this same throne room, I mean, you see stairs, you see a chair, you even see a statue in the shape of a Kong-like figure. With the title New Empire, we're believing that this might not be the only giant titan of his kind. He could be leading an army of similar titans. Whether they look like him or what I have seen some fans speculate, it would be cool if it's different species of apes or monkeys, all led by this orangutan. That would kind of give me vibes of Planet of the Apes, but seeing that kind of group in Titan form going after Godzilla and Kong, that could be pretty awesome. Another thing pointing to the intelligence is I think we can pretty much bet that this villain is the one that ended up creating the big axe that Kong has in Godzilla vs Kong. I remember before the movie was released, that's one of the biggest things we were speculating, is that scene where King Kong would rip a scale off Godzilla, put it on a bone, tie it together. We're like, man, that's kind of weird. Is Kong intelligent enough to do that? Will that fit within the universe? And none of that happened. Kong just stumbled upon it within the throne, picked it up and said, yeah, this will be my weapon now. But it'll be really cool now in New Empire to see the origin of this axe, because origin does seem to play a big factor in the movie. It's not just the origin of this axe. We're going to see the origins of Godzilla and King Kong's, the start of their war, and honestly, this villain might be at the center of it. For the longest time, we thought Godzilla's and King Kong's were always fighting with one another. What if they were actually always friendly and peaceful, living amongst each other just fine? That maybe a lot of those cave drawings are not them fighting one another, but fighting together against this bigger threat all those years ago. That would also explain why we have the Godzilla and King Kong skull in the teaser. Their ancestors have fought in battle going up against this individual. I think back to that one scene in Godzilla vs Kong where after Kong picks up the axe, you kind of see on the floor this light up space, and it's actually a bunch of those battle axes forming the Godzilla spine. Going back to this title being New Empire, it would be crazy if we find out there was an army of Kongs wielding these axes side by side with Godzilla's, who allowed them to take a scale off their back so that they can fight this bigger threat together. And I guess on that subject, people are very excited to find out what kind of atomic abilities this villain will have. With the eyes glowing in the teaser, there's definitely going to be some sort of projectile that this villain is going to be able to create, whether it's electricity powers or what I'm hoping for is that atomic breath shooting out. The most common thing fans are agreeing with now about the title is that the X essentially stands for collaboration. A lot of times you'll see this with like brands and companies, and in this movie it's definitely a collaboration of the two. It is Godzilla and Kong working together to fight this bigger threat. But then people have also wondered the X could stand for a hybrid, and that does push me towards this villain having Godzilla-like abilities, although being shaped almost like a Kong. In a lot of the human subplots in the MonsterVerse, they have been desperately trying to figure out how to steal Godzilla's atomic powers, and that's even been a motivating factor for going to Hollow Earth, is to get closer to that atomic energy down there. It could be very likely that at one point this was just a regular old random titan that stumbled upon this atomic energy and was just able to harness it for himself. The final thing I'll say here is, look, I don't think this will be the last Godzilla and Kong team-up movie. I feel like they're going to want to round it out and make it a trilogy here. So we already had Godzilla vs Kong. We're about to have Godzilla x Kong. They're going to do one more movie. And I know there's a lot of fans disappointed this villain didn't turn out to be Biollante, Space Godzilla, Destroyer. And I feel like they're not going to end the series without doing something like that with a classic Titan villain coming in for the final showdown. It just has to kind of be built up. And so to get to that point where we have both Godzilla and Kong in a place where they can go after a much larger threat, a much more powerful threat, I think King Kong is gonna need a power-up himself. And I feel like what will happen at the end of this movie is the same way that this villain was able to harness the atomic energy within Hollow Earth, Kong is gonna be able to steal that for himself, put it in him, and become an upgraded version of Kong that would then be a much more helpful ally with Godzilla fighting against Destroyer, Biollante, Mechaghidorah, who knows? But this is the fun of having a brand new Titan villain out there. I'm excited, man. Now, this is why I throw it off to you guys. You hear me ramble on a little bit more about this movie. What is the most exciting thing for you? What do you think they'll introduce here? What do you most want to see out of this villain? Anything and everything, be sure and like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, Team Kong!